Let me guess, if this video title has interested you at all, you probably have found yourself starting out strong with your language learning routine. Everything goes well for a little bit, and then inevitably you lose motivation. We are going to discuss in this video why this actually happens, diagnose the problem, and give you actionable steps that you can take this week in order to still stay consistent even when motivation drops. Everything I'm about to say here is according to the Mindful Fluency Method, which is my signature method I use to coach language learners who work with me on so that they can learn their languages more effectively, more sustainably, and also improve faster. The very first part of the Mindful Fluency Method is going to call for you to set your goals, but also always check in with them, because one of the reasons for our motivation to drop is because we've actually outgrown our goals due to usually more self-awareness, more skill improvement, and or more clarity. So in order for our motivation to naturally increase, if we are not aligned anymore with what we're doing, then our internal motivation can definitely lag. To fix this, I really encourage you this week to set aside simply 10 minutes to ask yourself what you have gained in recent months, this year, has then led you to outgrow your goal, and what you need to adjust in your routine in order to accommodate that. For example, let's say that you set a goal for just learning 30 words a day, but let's also say that you sit down for your 10-minute session and you reflect and you reason, hey, I was actually really hyper-focused on productivity instead of actually really wanting to enjoy the journey. I just wanted to get as fast to my fluency goal as possible, and I thought that this would help me do that, but it's actually demotivated me because I'm no longer aligned with it. And I'm actually more aligned with finding joy and enjoying the learning process again. What you could then reason to yourself, and this is just an example, is to reduce the required amount of words you want to learn per day to just about 10, plus add on reading in your target language for the next 30 minutes to an hour per day. Because reading brings you a lot of joy, and it also gives you a way to see words in context more. Another great reflection question that's included in the Mindful Fluency Method is also asking yourself regularly, am I getting actually demotivated because I'm trying to avoid failure? Now, this goes a little bit more into what I was talking about what our motivation for setting goals in the first place is. What mindset are we coming from as we set goals for ourselves? Because that influences the whole rest of our language learning process and journey and motivation, right? But sometimes we can easily psych ourselves out. I know, because I have been there so many times, where we tell ourselves, I am wanting to avoid failure instead of wanting to grow. And this can be best exemplified by Carol Dweck's theory on the growth versus the fixed mindset. She came up with the concept of, are you playing to win or are you playing not to lose? If we have a fixed mindset and we're playing not to lose, we usually find ourselves avoiding what would be a really good improvement, beneficial to our skills in language learning, but we hold ourselves back. This is best exemplified by what I used to struggle with, which is I was reaching a B2 in German, and I was getting really exhausted, getting really unmotivated, even though I felt that on paper I was at a good level. Well, I was also playing not to lose, and the fact that I would not go to absolutely any language learning event because I didn't want to feel like I was going to come off as a fraud to other people. I was so afraid of what others would think of me and that I would not be considered a valid language learner if I made even one mistake, because I would just be so embarrassed, really afraid of the embarrassment. Going through a lot of that mental energy is really exhausting, especially if you do it for years, like I did. You're playing constantly to not lose, instead of playing to win, more featuring the growth mindset, where you see challenges as ways to improve, as mistakes to just help you further along on your journey. It can, in terms of motivation, be more psychologically deep than we realize in terms of figuring out why we are in a motivation slump. So I really suggest you sit with that and include it as well in your 10-minute reflection about how setting your goals in the first place, what feelings have motivated them before, has showed up for you, and how that has contributed possibly to a lack in motivation. Because once you have that clarity, that's when you can take the next best step in order to increase it again. Another great demotivator, especially if we get in the habit of doing it long term, is simply forcing ourselves to study. I know that in specific cases, we do have to force ourselves to do things that we don't necessarily want to do. It's a very subjective choice depending on the individual language learner. And that's also why I love to coach language learners one-on-one in order to really get to the meat of the issue and really decide if forcing yourselves through study is actually more beneficial for you in the long term, or if it's like the most cases of language learners where it simply builds resentment and guilt to the actual learning process. But in general, my advice to language learners who are looking for motivation is be honest with yourself. How often do you force yourself to learn? Because I'm sure that's not how you started out before when wanting to learn the language, right? You didn't just say to yourself, okay, I'm going to force myself to do this for no reason, right? Ask yourself then, what is one way this week that you can meet yourself where you are at, meet your energy where you are at? Again, this is part of the Mindful Fluency Method to help you look at yourself and your language learning process more holistically, to let you just zoom out of sometimes the tunnel vision that we can get in trying to get to our goals as fast and as efficiently as possible. Well, zooming out and understanding how we are talking to ourselves when we are learning, our motivations for why we are forcing ourselves to learn languages, which then demotivates us to learn languages, right? Ironically, really understanding that, and then also understanding that we all have 3 language learning seasons that we go through is pivotal to approaching language learning from a gentler lens, and again, meeting yourself where you are. We have, of course, the fast progress season that is held on a pedestal, right? Because everyone shows their highlight reels. Another season, the second one, is gradual growth, where even though progress is not as visible, doesn't feel as fast as in a fast progress season, it is more sustainable. And it actually gives you breathing room to zoom out of your language learning, as I'm encouraging you to do in this video, and understand and reflect on how you learn best. The third and final season, restorative rest, for language learners is also when you decide to take a break from a language or just from the whole language learning process itself. Gradual growth and restorative rest seasons will give you more internal clarity about how you are moving through your language learning and where you should go, where to take the next step. So keep that in mind this week. What language season are you in out of those 3 seasons, and how can you accommodate yourself and your energy better in order to adapt to your season instead of feel like you're fighting yourself the entire time? I, for example, am in the restorative rest season for like half of my languages, and I'm definitely in a gradual growth season for the ones that I am actively pursuing. So that means really a lot of input, to be honest, compared to output. So I maybe just have 1 speaking lesson per week, but I do sometimes read, I do sometimes listen to different podcasts or listen to an audiobook in a language. And another great way to wrap up your reflection is ask yourself, how am I setting goals, and how can I turn those expectations that sometimes aren't serving us and set intentions instead. Intentions help you really break down what you think you want into actionable weekly steps. So what can you set the intention for doing today? So instead of saying, I want to reach C1 and then leave it so open and vague, set the intention this week of, I want to simply enjoy 1 conversation lesson that I've planned for this week. That's it. If you are just having lack of motivation because life is busy, it gets in the way as it does for all of us, I really suggest you pre-planning an automatic answer that really helps you immediately execute the lowest energy activity that still leaves you satisfied at the end, so that you aren't deciding what to do on a date when you are already depleted of energy. We tend to not make the best decisions when we are depleted, okay? So that will really help you understand, okay, how can I keep on going and be consistent even when motivation does drop? Something like this for me is when I feel really low and depleted, I already know that because I'm a total beginner in Korean, I can literally just draw the letters that I remember working on in learning Hangul in the air. I don't even have to use my phone. It's literally just me. So think about what automatic answer you can make for yourself. Make sure to like, subscribe if this is the first time you are finding me and you enjoy the content. I look forward to seeing you in another video very soon.